Okay,
Perfect.
got it.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Periodic Conversations. I have Mary Stewart with me today. And so, Mary Stewart has 30 years of experience as an educator and school counselor, recently retired, currently certified in emotional fitness coaching, and just became a new grandmother. She doesn't view herself as an expert, even with her many years of training and experience in the field of mental health, but mental health is complex, and that is why. She feels that human beings each have a unique set of needs, genetic traits, skills, values, and different life/family experiences, thus making treatment of mental health problems, issues, disorders, and illnesses a unique journey. So the topics of focus for this episode today are how Mary has learned there is strength in vulnerability, and good listeners are hard to find but essential to mental health.
Mhm.
So welcome, Mary. Thank you so much for being on here today.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah,
Hi.
I'm excited to talk about mental health. Yep.
So let's get started with the what you've learned that there's strength in vulnerability.
Okay, okay. Um, I, I, I guess it's kind of been like a journey. I think I've gone from really working hard at trying to portray myself as being perfect, no issues, no problems, but yet being someone that would put myself out there to help other people. And then I got to a point where I really started to have issues. And some of the issues that I started to have were around anxiety and worry and depression. And it was it was complicated because I felt that I had to be this know-it-all. And yet when it came to myself, there was a lot about myself that I didn't know. Like, for example, I don't know why I get anxious from time to time. I don't know why I'm prone to depression. So I started on a journey of wanting to learn more about myself, and I started to open up more to various people, whether it was friends or whether it was some of the people that I'm training with in emotional fitness. And what I discovered was that the more I learned about myself, the stronger I felt. And it was a real dichotomy because it's kind of like, wow, the more I put myself out there, and the more I'm honest with myself and others, and the more vulnerable I am, I, I end up feeling better, not depressed. So that's what led me, Sarah, when you asked me about the topic about mental health, that's what led me to really understand that being vulnerable is not a weakness, but actually being vulnerable can really be helpful in terms of uh, learning more about yourself, feeling happier, and not feeling that pain or that stress that somehow I have to be perfect. And I know there's lots of people out there that work hard to try to hide how they really feel inside because that's what they've been taught. And I would say the opposite is true. I think the more that I practice being vulnerable, the better I feel about who I am.
Mhm. Yeah, I also think too that when you're able to be vulnerable with others, you're finally admitting to yourself, hey, this is something that I struggle with, because without being able to be vulnerable with others, you're not really being vulnerable with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And hiding that vulnerability, it's almost like uh by hiding it, I don't know if we do anybody any good, because then people don't get to know us,
Mhm.
and then we don't really get to know ourselves. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And another thing with that too is when you're not sharing your story, others aren't learning, and then it makes you feel like you're alone because others aren't sharing their stories because we're all too scared to share and be vulnerable. But it's
Yes.
once we're able to be a little bit more vulnerable and share our stories, and it's like, oh wow, I feel that same way. Or wow, maybe I could try this and it would help me become, I don't know, stronger in XYZ arenas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, connection, right? Because it sharing vulnerability can really help us feel connected.
Mhm.
Uh, because it then allows other people to share what's going on with them. And I really think that uh that whole thing about loneliness and being alone, I think it begins with people really being afraid to open up. And and I know it's all tied into stigma, right? And we know that with mental health, we've come a long ways, but I still think there's still a lot of stigma, and sometimes there's even more stigma for people like myself that work in mental health, because a lot of us feel that, or for me, have worked in mental health,
Mhm.
because a lot of us felt that, we had to be the know-it-alls, right? We had to, and therefore we had to have all the answers. Uh, and I can tell you, Sarah, that a lot of people that work in mental health, they have their own struggles. So, and I know I did, and I know I still do, right? So,
Yeah. It's almost, I mean, at least from what I've observed, people that choose those type of jobs are people who are empaths because they care a lot about others.
yeah,
So trying to
yeah,
separate work from home life and then also dealing with your own situations, I can imagine how difficult that would be like day to day. And then
yeah,
maybe getting a practitioner to also help you too, so that you can deal with some of the things that you're going through.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I can imagine it being rather heavy and people not acknowledging that, say maybe, you need some time to just like discuss where you're at. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and it's huge because mental health practitioners burnout is very high, and you're right. There, a lot of people that work in mental health are empaths, very empathetic, very compassionate. But sometimes they really struggle with giving some of that empathy and that compassion to themselves. They're very busy giving it to others, that they forget about their own self-care needs. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I
So
guess, yeah, because I guess like vulnerability when you're in a, I mean, I'm not like, I don't mean it like the power seat, but essentially you're the one that's expected to have all the answers. So
yeah,
essentially, sort of a power seat. And then you're sitting there and now you can't be vulnerable.
yeah,
You have to
yeah,
just listen and care, and yeah,
yeah.
that takes a lot of energy for sure.
Oh, it does. It does, because you're almost putting yourself aside, and at times not having the energy to deal with your own issues. But dealing with your own issues is so paramount when you're helping people with mental health, because if not, your issues get in the way, right? Like you end up, instead of really helping others, you're trying to help yourself through other people. So you have to really, dealing with your own issues is such an important part of being a mental health practitioner. And it's not always easy to do. I have sat on the opposite side of a psychologist, and it's really weird being on the other side. So it's a very different kind of feeling, to accept care when you're the caregiver. So
Mhm. Yeah, I can imagine. So, but that's awesome that you've been able to acknowledge how important vulnerability is for you in your life,
mhm,
and then
mhm,
being able to talk about it too, which helps others.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, where is your experience at with noticing that good listeners are hard to find but essential for your mental health?
Okay. Well, I had shared in my story that I was struggling with my daughter, and her and I had an argument, and uh I really went to a very dark place. I was very afraid that she would disown me or not let me see my grandson, and it just it just made me realize, going through that experience, even though I view myself as being a really strong person, emotionally fit and mentally fit, uh, that it's so easy to still experience a crisis.
Mhm.
And uh, eh, going back to my daughter, she did shut me out for a short period of time, thankfully. But uh, I, I, I mean, I apologize for my part. I mean, she also played a part. It was something between the two of us,
Mhm.
but uh, I was very anxious for a good 7, 8 days. I wasn't sleeping. It was hard to eat. And I started to think about, wow, okay, so this is what it's like when you have like a mental health crisis, like nothing's working. I tried to distract myself. I tried to read. I tried to meditate. I tried to I tried to do all the right things, but nothing was stopping the rumination and the worry that I felt that somehow I may never see her again. And it was then that I thought I need to talk, and I made an appointment with a therapist, but I also opened up with my husband, and thankfully he's a good listener. And I went for a walk with a friend, and she too is a good listener, and I'm connected to some through emotional fitness. I'm connected to some very good listeners, and just having people that could validate and acknowledge my experience and not judge me, oh, I'm having these dark thoughts, or I'm having such a hard time to not think about my daughter, or I'm really stressing and ruminating. I just everything that I've been trained and know how to do, I just can't seem to help myself. So just having people that were able to listen and help me listen to myself was so helpful. And in that time of darkness, I thought about people who might be alone, who maybe don't have good listeners in their circle, and I I it just became clear how thankful I am and how grateful I am that I do have some people that are good listeners.
Mhm.
Now, um, in my experience, Sarah, and I don't know about you, but I just feel like good listeners are hard to find. I am married to someone who is also like a career counselor, so he's had lots of practice and lots of training in listening. So I consider myself very fortunate.
Mhm.
And but that doesn't mean he's perfect at listening. Listening is one of those skills that takes it's a lifetime kind of skill. It takes lots of practice to be a good listener. But I would say that for the most part, I consider myself fortunate, but I have had experiences with many, many people who I hate to judge them, but are not very good listeners, or have a hard time not giving advice, or have a hard time not judging, or have a hard time not downplaying, like, oh, come on, everything will be okay, like
Mhm.
wanting to just minimize, or wanting to, oh yeah, I can relate, and then take the conversation back to themselves. So I
Mhm.
find that that's more the norm. Or if the conversation is uncomfortable, the other norm is people will try to change the topic. So,
Mhm.
so experiencing that dark time, even though it was short, and my daughter and I, we worked things out, and myself, my husband, her and her boyfriend, the four of us sat down, and I was really able to listen and hear what they had to say, and they did the same thing for me. And so our relationship is so much stronger now, because of that. Even though it was a painful experience, it was an argument, a disagreement, whatever you want to call it, but we both said some things that we regret saying. You know how sometimes you get angry, but I'm glad that that's behind me. And but it sure helped to have people that are able to listen. So
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for sharing, for sure. It it's a good example for others to hear a scenario where, say, they're uncomfortable in a situation because, say even with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or just even a friend, where you're sitting there and you're overthinking absolutely everything because you think that, they're not going to want to be friends with me anymore. They don't want anything to do with me. And just, I guess, acknowledging that as like being able to sit down and have a good conversation about it and trying to listen to one another and just respecting each other's boundaries is super important. Um,
mhm.
but what tips would you give to others to be a good listener?
Well, uh, being a good listener, in emotional fitness, it comes with a structure. So it starts out with almost making a commitment to listen. So if someone is going to open up, then it would be good for me to tell them that you know, I am going to listen to what you have to say. And in emotional fitness, we sort of refer to that as establishing a contract. We tell the other person that we are going to do our best to simply listen. So I also like to view that as I'm going to make a commitment to listen and focus on the other person, and not be self-centered or too focused on myself. So so it does start with just a commitment to listen, and then just really learning uh to hear what the other person has to say, not try to change it, not try to interfere, but just to hear what they have to say. And it's amazing, it sounds really simple, but hearing what the other person has to say means that I have to put myself aside and just listen to what they have to say,
Mhm.
um, without me interjecting or putting my spin on it or bringing myself into the conversation, because it's not about me, it's about them and what they're experiencing and how they're feeling. And so the other commitment is just hear what they have to say, and then to clarify and respond and give back to the person what they've shared. That way, if I give back to them what they've shared, it gives them an opportunity to hear what they've said. So I may ask a question, or I just may say something as simple as, uh, I hear you saying, and then basically giving back what they've said. I mean, we used to call that paraphrasing. Now it's kind of like just accepting and responding. I like to use the words accept what they have to say and respond by showing them that this is what I've understood, and then trying to find out from them if I have understood correctly, right?
Mhm.
And then you know maybe inviting the other person to think about what they might want to do, if it's appropriate. But I think the most important thing is to not to make the conversation about myself, but to just be really focused on the other person and what they're saying. Sometimes people get really tripped up with take, thinking more about themselves. So the more I can put myself aside and just really focus and hear what the other person has to say and accept what the other person has to say, I believe that those are characteristics of a good listener. So
Okay.
yeah,
So listen and accept, paraphrase and understand,
yeah,
respond to
yeah,
what they're talking about, not interjecting and adding yourself into it, but exactly what they're talking about. And then try to figure out some sort of conclusion for them or some sort of way to deal with the situation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But really, really making sure that it comes from them, right? Because they may not want to do anything, so it's really important that I acknowledge and trust that they have the solutions and the answers for themselves, right? So I would never say, here's what I would do if I were you. It would be more, um, uh, what might you want to do about this, if you want
Okay.
to do something. It's totally up to them. Yeah,
Interesting. Because I've definitely been there where I've given like where I relate to myself because I feel like that's helpful to know that they aren't alone.
yeah,
So that's why I would go about it that way. And then also what I would do because I would feel like maybe A, I've been in this scenario, or B, I've seen someone else be through this scenario. So I give advice rather than letting them choose how they want to deal with it.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
very interesting that you say it that way. I
yeah,
appreciate that advice because for myself, I definitely that's not the way that I respond or listen.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
yeah. Well, it really, it's a more trusting way of approaching a conversation. In other words, I want to communicate that I trust you, and I trust that you have the answers to do what you feel you need to do. Because what worked for me, or what might work for me, may not work for you. And so I think that too is a cornerstone of a good listener. But keep in mind, Sarah, there's nothing wrong at times, sharing. But I like sharing this is what has worked for me. But I like to, um, if I'm asked, I like to give if I'm asked, right? Well, what would you do? Now, or I might say, I'm not sure what I would do because I'm not you, but what would you want to do? But at the same time, I don't think it's harmful. It's just sometimes it's just much better to stay out of the way and let the person figure it out themselves. In some ways, it's almost easier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Rather than interjecting yourself and then they do what you recommended and then it didn't work for them.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. We've all experienced that. Hey, yeah,
Yes, definitely.
yeah, yeah. So,
A question that I did have though is when you discussed emotional fitness coaching. So what exactly is that?
well, emotional fitness coaching here, let me just it's based on a book written by Warren Bredman, and it's called The 9 Steps to Emotional Fitness. And there's tools that a coach can use with another person, or there's tools that people can use with themselves. And the tools are, I mean, the first tool is listening. There's the tool of life scale, where people can kind of do an inventory to see their satisfactions and frustrations in life, and see if it's balanced. And all the tools are geared towards helping people feel more balanced. It really is about achieving inner balance, but it's also tools that people can use to better understand themselves and to better accept themselves. So
Okay.
um, yeah. So But Warren Redman is the author of the 9 Steps to Emotional Fitness, and he put together all the tools based on his work as a psychotherapist in England, and his study with Carl Rogers and you know, many professionals that are very well known in the field of psychology. So
Oh,
I think uh, if you Googled Warren Redman emotional fitness, there's lots of stuff online and in terms of his work. And he's a beautiful man. He lives in, I believe he lives in Moncton or New Brunswick, and he's an author now, sort of semi-retired from emotional fitness, and now he's writing I believe he's writing fiction novels, but
okay.
you can even watch videos of him practicing listening skills with people, and he's such a gifted listener. So
Mm,
yeah,
I love that. That's awesome. And
yeah.
so, with that being said, with the emotional fitness coaching, are you going to start doing coaching as well?
Well, Sarah, good question. I'm when I retired, I thought about going into the world of coaching, but then I became a grandmother,
Yeah.
and life has become very busy, and I care for my elderly mother, and so I'm training and I'm working towards it,
Okay.
uh, uh, because I started it, and I just want to finish it because I started it. I certainly wouldn't mind maybe every now and then doing a little bit of coaching, but it probably wouldn't be something that I would want to do like on a full-time basis. I kind of view it as more of a hobby more than anything else. I love using the tools. Sometimes I use the tools on myself, if I'm you know, if I'm just kind of grappling with something, I may take myself through like a time capsule or a life scale or a learning from experience, and just kind of process my own inner thoughts and feelings with myself. And I'm always amazed at how much I learn by using the tools just with myself. So now, having said that, if once I'm certified, if someone contacted me and wanted just a listening session or a couple of listening sessions, I certainly wouldn't say no, you know. Yeah.
Okay. So, is there somewhere that people could reach you if they did want to reach out to learn more about, say, the emotional fitness coaching?
Well, my probably through I had given you Michelle Gallant Richards. I had
Yeah.
through the Emotional Fitness Institute,
Okay.
and Warren Redmond as well. So online through probably through the Emotional Fitness Institute online, and through Michelle, and certainly Michelle and I are in contact all the time. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll definitely be sure to add that into the bio that I write for this episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing everything you did today. I really appreciate your vulnerability, and it was wonderful chatting with you. It's been forever, so thank you so much for being a guest here.
Oh, well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Uh, it's nice. It feels like podcast. It feels like just having a conversation, and I certainly appreciated how, you know, how, what a good listener you are. So yeah.
Thank you. Like you
Yeah.
said, we're all just learning. We're all just trying to
Yes.
get there.
Yeah, absolutely. One step at a time. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you, Compound community, for being here and listening to Periodic Conversations.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care, Sarah. Yeah.
You too, Mary.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.